I'm so excited. I really am. This is here to celebrate a remarkable book and a remarkable writer. First, it's probably one of the most important things to say is that Zoe and I would like to acknowledge that we are meeting today on the lands of the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people of the Kulin Nation, who are the traditional custodians of the land on which this event takes place. We acknowledge any First Nations people here today, and we pay our respects to the elders, past and present. We're going to talk about myth today and the importance of myth, and it's one of the great honours of being on this country and the generosity of First Nations people that we have some of the greatest myths ever in the history of humanity, and that is something that we don't take lightly. This land has always been Aboriginal land and will always be Aboriginal land, and we are proud to be writers on this land, acknowledging that. Some housekeeping. Please turn your mobile phones off. We were going to have a conversation. There will be time for questions directed to Zoe because he's a remarkable writer, as I said, and I know that a lot of you will have a lot of questions that you want to ask. I'm the papu in this conversation, so we've got this thing called Slido, which is an iPad that we will be using. When it comes to the question time, there will be a QR code, and that you can actually ask a question just by using that QR code, and then Zoe will answer it from the stage up here. The other really important thing to say is a big thank you to Hares and Hyenas, who are the booksellers here tonight. Hares and Hyenas have been supporting queer and trans writers for decades in this city. Zoe, one of the most remarkable memories I have is of my father coming to the launch of my first book, which was at Hares and Hyenas.
No way.
And I've got a beautiful photograph of Roland, who is there tonight with my old man, which I will cherish till the end of time. So please, please, please buy a copy of Eros, Zoe's book, and he'll sign it for you at the end of the session. My books are there too. If you see me if you want to sign, it would be a privilege, but I'll be on the floor, so you just come and find me.
I want mine signed.
This is the main event, right? Zoe Terakes is an actor and writer living and working on Gadigal land. They are a vocal advocate for trans rights within arts industries and on the global scale. One of the things that's most impressive about you, Zoe, is your commitment and your activism. Also, bloody important is that you are one terrific actor. My boyfriend loves Talk to Me, and he loves horror, but Wayne is like very, very, very meticulous about horror. So you've got a great nod. Other acting credits include Nine Perfect Strangers, Creamery, Wentworth, which I love, and Ellie and Abby. And Zoe will soon appear in the Marvel Studio series. Is that?
Oh, that's out. That's all bio.
Sorry about that. I have a confession which I've confessed to Zoe. I'm not a real Marvel.
No, nor am I.
Phew. The amazing actor appeared across the Australian stages in a lot of performances. So most of you will know Zoe as an actor. I do mean it. Reading the short stories that are part of this collection, I think one of the hardest things to do is to, as a new writer, right, is to write with such assuredness and confidence about the power and magic of myth, and to make them contemporary and make them relevant to our contemporary life, but not lose the timelessness that is essential to myth. And I'm just in awe that you did it. I really do mean that. If you haven't read the book, I'm going to channel another queer elder and say, do yourself a favour, all right? So reading Eros, beginning about it all, immediately I was struck by how these myths are part of my DNA, Zoe, right? I remember as a little boy being given a collection of Greek myths, and they were child's books with illustration, and one of them was about Apollo and Ianthus, who is a boy he loves, a youth that he loves, who he kills accidentally. Now, because it was a children's book, the queerness was not made explicit, but I understood it. I must have been only 8 or 9. It was like a hit in the guts. So I wanted to ask you, were these myths part of your DNA?
Yeah, they were. I mean, I think it's interesting because I think so many queer kids, kind of Greek or not, share this fascination with mythology, whether it's Greek mythology or Egyptian mythology. There's something in it that draws us in because they are dark and they are sexy, and it's like the queerness is allowed because it's the sun god and a flower. You know, it's like the lines are more blurred, but we feel them still as queer kids. They do that thing, you know, they do hit us in the guts. And so, yeah, they were definitely a part of my life as a kid. And then kind of like fairy tales, you know, when you rediscover them as an adult and you're like, Little Red Riding Hood did what? You know, just kind that's been kind of my experience with them, is going back and be like, Hercules was a poof, you know, like in plain sight, which is thrilling, you know, especially when they're your old stories, to go, I don't have to dig very far to find myself in our history, you know. Yeah,
that's I mean that magic, I think, that is there in that curiosity of a child across myths. You're right, whether they're the Egyptian myths, whether they're the myths of the First Nations here, whether they're the Greek myths, they are entrancing. But there's the promise for us as queers, right, in the myths. But I remember giving a friend of mine, she's a Greek-Australian poet, talking to her about Ovid's Metamorphoses, which I love, and her returning to me and going, Christo, I can't deal with the sexism, the misogyny in these stories. And I was reading a book a couple of weeks ago and raving about it to a friend of mine, and her heritage is Hindu. And she was talking about her relationship to the Mahabharata and about the misogyny in those stories. How was it delving back into them and coping with that misogyny, that and also a strategy as a writer to write against it, as a queer person and as a trans person?
Yeah, it was kind of fascinating in a way, like, because you kind of, at a glance, I would look at them and go, oh, well, I can't use that. That's not a queer story. And then look back and go, oh, no, this is actually just retold with so much hatred and shame put in the mouths of these characters that the queerness has been written out altogether. Or in the instance of Iphis and Ianthe, which is the first story, how that's written in Ovid's Metamorphoses is essentially from the perspective of Iphis, who, as he tells us, is a girl on fire for another girl, but she thinks that is so disgusting that it would be better that she loved a cow. Like, bestiality would be kinder than queerness, or more acceptable. Anyway, and so it was more a process of like fucking digging in and stripping these men's perspectives out of our stories, our myths, that they've handed them down to us. You know, they've given them to us laden in their misogyny and their queerphobia. And so to kind of pull at the flesh until all that was left was the bones of these stories. And the bones are beautiful. The bones are so queer and so trans. And I haven't really changed the bones of the stories much at all. All I've done is, in the same way that they've kind of slapped their hatred of gay people on it. So I've just slapped my love of gay people on it, you know? That's kind of it.
Can I ask, how was that process of choosing the stories? Like, how did that evolve? What was the work involved in doing that?
It was a pretty intense research period, but not the kind of intensity that I thought it would be. I was thinking I'd have to dig so far for any queerness in any. Let's just beat over the head with it. It's there. It's there in plain sight. Like my dad always says that Greeks invented sex and Romans invented sex with women. Yeah, and I think that certainly was the case from my reading. There's just, God, there's a lot of gay sex. So yeah, it certainly wasn't, it was a process of narrowing down, to be honest. Like I had a list of about 20 and just went, okay, here it all is. And it was a process of going, I guess, what kind of love do I want to include in the book, and what kind of relationships do I want to include in the book, and what kind of queerness do I want to include in the book, and finding, I guess, 5 that spoke to each other in different ways or in complementary ways. Because I didn't just want, 2 men through the whole book, or love that was just between 2 people through the whole, kind of wanted it to be a bit more of an expansive telling of love, I suppose.
Okay, I am fascinated by that ability you had to keep a faith to the mythic structure, to the magic of myth, and also make it contemporary. How hard was that process of doing that? Like, did it feel conscious, or was it?
Well, I don't know if this is like a cop-out answer, but I think there's something, because I've read a lot of retellings of these myths, like books that I've loved, like Circe and Song of Achilles, and, extraordinary books. But I think, honest to God, having the blood of the stories that you're telling does a lot of the work. And it sounds wanky when I say it, but it's true. It's like there is a understanding of these stories that's just innate, I suppose.
Which is what we respond to almost immediately as queer readers.
Yeah, right? Exactly. And so I think holding the magic of the myth and putting it in a modern context, it's like that's the gold that you keep anyway,
One of the things you do that I think is important is the idea of Hades or hell. You strip it of the Abrahamic convention, like where you talked about shame, and I think that is one of the things we have to do in going back to those stories, is stripping them of the shame, like reclaiming them for our sexuality, for our beings. So I love and I'm going to use the Greek word evridiki, which is Eurydice, but I love it in Greek. Evridiki, or and Orpheus, sort of. Right? That moment where they go to hell. Hell is not the hell of the Christian, Jewish and Muslim tradition. Hell is actually the site of liberation. And I think it's there in Hermaphroditus as well, the last stunning story in the book. What is the underworld for you as a queer person?
The bearded tit. Any good bar. It was interesting with that story in particular, with Eurydice. I was like at war with that story. I rewrote it so many times and I just couldn't find a way to make Orpheus likeable. Like I thought he was so fucking wet. Like he's just kind of that annoying, like starving artist kind of, And I just, I just wrestled with him.
I love that you made him the Anglo boy that I've hated all
Yeah,
my
he's a white boy. He's a white boy.
Anyway. So it's beautiful.
So I think I found, I can't take credit for it. It was really inspired by, Sarah Rule's Eurydice, play. Yeah. Extraordinary play. And even though her underworld is a fucked up place, it's the way she sort of oversimplifies her underworld and flattens it in a way. Like in her play, Hades is a little boy on a tricycle, like on a little like cart thing, and he comes up to her and he's like, I'm Hades. And she's like, why should I believe you? And he's like, I can do push-ups in your bones. And she's like, yeah. And she's like, prove it. And then she just goes, fuck. You know, like there's kind of a immediacy and simplicity to her underworld that I certainly borrowed from. But I think having it as a place where, and there's a lot of it in the book of, you know, in Hermaphroditus as well, where it's like, okay, if you think we're going to hell, and if you think we're barbarians or we're evil or we want to, you know, hurt women and children, like, fuck you, okay, what if we do, you know, that kind of like taking what somebody uses against you and raising it to them, raising it back at them. And I think that's where my inspiration for the underworld came from, I suppose, is just going, okay, fuck you. Yeah, if we are in the underworld, it's the sexiest bar you've ever been to.
Yeah. I mean, I think that is the power of that, of the stories, all of the stories, but in that particular, in the Eurydice story, that hell, because that's where we were sent, right? That as queer people, the notion is that our bodies, our very bodies, and that as a trans person, that's even more acutely kind of part of the experience, is that it's shameful. That's to be made a complete outsider. You are no longer part of the social. So to reclaim it in that way is. And I love the bodies. I love the bodies, that the bodies have dicks and clits and breasts and balls, and they're not associated with gender. That felt euphoric as a reader. Did it feel euphoric as a writer to do?
It did. And I must say, for this to be like a circle jerk, but like...
Which I don't mind.
Yeah, right.
Just saying.
Yeah, who doesn't? But I listened to an interview with you. It was this podcast and you talked about Anglo people writing about the body versus ethnic people writing about the body. And it's something that it really resonated with me, because I think there is a visceralness in how we as, you know, Greek writers or ethnic writers or non-Anglo writers experience bodies, and how much sex is embedded in our work, you know. And I don't think it is possible for me to write anything without bodies being at the center, and bodies that are deemed ugly or unfuckable, and what happens when that body is fucked or fucks, you know. Like, I don't know, I think trans bodies are deemed unfuckable or grotesque in so much mainstream media, you know. It's like...
Or pitiful if it's not...
Yeah, exactly. But then, you know, it's those people who are sliding into the DMs of trans women, you know. But it is... Yeah, it was really quite... Particularly in that story, like, felt like a real act of defiance, having these trans bodies and queer bodies that operated entirely independent of any other body, and they were messy and ugly and, like you say, chopped up and fucked up. Like, literally, the Eurydice has holes in her cheeks and somebody fingers them, you know, like, it's really fucked up. But that was euphoric as well, you know, just going like, we don't call this ugly here, you know.
I've got a question to ask, but what I thought, because we have talked about the stories and the writing of the body, I would love if you would give us a reading, yes. Zoe, and then I'll get to that question.
Okay. This is a rude reading.
Who's got a problem with that?
Get out. Okay. This is from the last story, which is the story of Hermaphroditus. But I've said it in the cross in the 90s. This is before the change. Okay. It's still early. King's Cross is stretching and so are we. We do a warm-up lap of Darlow Road, punch a few darts, have a chat with the Archbishop, a homeless god-botherer with some pretty big opinions on the moon landing, before heading for our usual spot, the Trove. Fuck the Trove, Alekos says. It's full of skips now and they charge up the cunt. He's right. The Trove used to be rough, teeming with closeted wogs and ugly queens, cabbies, hookers, junkies, you name it. The Trove was the sewer that filtered the scum of the cross and protected the real world from it. A home to some and a last resort to others. The floor of the Trove is stained with my semen, sweat, and dried blood. Once I fingered a cabbie's asshole so hard in the toilets he punched me in the face after he came. If you sliced that place open, my DNA would be in the maggots eating its core. But it's changed the last few months. There are more gay boys there now. White ones, rich ones. They brought their fancy queens, fit, polished ones with flawless makeup and no stubble. Not like the local queens, with saucers for pupils and voices that drag like gravel deeper than my papaws. There are two things these white poofters hate in almost equal measure: ethnics and trannies. They hate ethnics because they think we want to kill them. We all look like one brown wash of greasy, barbaric, God-fearing rage. Not for a second does it occur to them that a person can be both an immigrant and a faggot. The only people they despise more than us are trannies. They hate transsexuals because they remind them too much of pussy, and pussy is what they're here to get away from. Pussy is what they have to deal with at work, on the train, at family lunch and social gatherings. They come here to be free of it, to breathe in the muscular, cock-filled air. That's where ethnic poofters are different to white poofters. We all love our mums too much to hate pussy. With the white poofter comes the demand for cleaner floors to dance on and cleaner toilets to snort off. That means hiring more cleaners, more staff, which means more expensive grog and more expensive security. And that's how these white faggots ruin clubs. Once they've got wind of a place, it begins its slow march to death. Give it a couple of years and it'll be full of heterosexual advertising honchos and film execs. Then the white faggots will go looking for the next place to ruin and the cycle repeats itself. Zoe tells Alekos to shut up, the Trove's fine. I can tell Zayad's starting to come down. No doubt he wants to go to the Trove because he scores his H off Mustafa, the old Leb bouncer. He's built like a brick house and gentler than God. Mustafa has been at the Trove longer than time. We follow a trail of shiny white gay men to the door where Mustafa is nowhere to be seen. Oi, Zai shouts at the Seki. Where's Mo? A chiseled white guy with a perfectly trimmed ginger beard turns to face us. Who's Mo? He says in an Irish accent. Ya kalb, Zai mutters. Every poofter and his dog's here now, Mahmoud says to me. What'd you call us? Some skinny white prick calls out, not realising that Mahmoud is gay too. Mahmoud does not correct him. Zayad pipes up and says, he called you a poofter cunt. I quickly put myself between them to stop Zayad knocking the little twink's lights out. As we walk away, he calls out, fucking refos. I turn and walk back to him. What was that? I called you a fucking refo, cunt, he says in a high-pitched nasal voice. I swing at his face, then his kidneys, then his face again. I think of Mahmoud's cousins and start kicking him hard in the ribs. He's on the ground, bleeding, clutching his stomach. Good, I think. That's for Mahmoud. Wiping my bloody knuckles on my jeans, I catch up to the others. Mahmoud takes my fist to his lips and kisses it. It stings beautifully. He is unafraid of my blood.
Yay. I said to Zoe, I mean, obviously we had a conversation on the phone, but we've really just met. But it was such a delight to do, and I was saying to Zoe that reading that story reminded me of being a really young man, like really young. Like I think I was only 17 and going to Sydney on my own for the first time, catching the train, being up on speed that whole journey, and wanting to go to what I'd heard was meant to be our paradise, Oxford Street. And a couple of the clubs, they were like, I just think they saw this wog boy and they just thought you shouldn't be here.
Yeah.
And it was actually one of the bouncers who, I don't know, somewhere in the Eastern Mediterranean
Yeah.
is where his heritage was. And he suggested that I go to the cross. And I ended up being taken up by these Pacifica trans women who looked after me so well that whole time in Sydney. And I'm sorry, I'm being a bit indulgent, but I just want you to thank you for acknowledging that history and making it, just that is part of the world we emerge from. And so that, I'm just going to say thank you for that.
Shout out.
Mate,
Thanks, Christos.
yeah, I think it's... You did talk, that's true about the body. I mean, I think that often people say about my writing, oh, it's really smelly. It's like, yeah, because smell is so important. That's how we desire. That's how we...
Yeah.
So there is something about how you use the whole of body in writing that I think is really important, Zoe. But the other thing I want to ask you about is also you're an actor. And there's a second question which I also want to ask, but I'll do the first one first, of course, which is, what is it about acting? What is it about performance that you bring into this thing called writing? Is there a relationship?
Yeah, there totally is. But one way, in my experience so far, is that acting helps writing, but my writing doesn't help my acting.
Okay.
So far. But also haven't been doing very much acting. It's been a little bit quiet. Yeah, I think I don't know, I think that it was actually in that writer's room we were talking about earlier that I've found that quite a few writers that I've met, particularly screenwriters, like actors are so like, oh my God, I love you, we've just met, big cuddle. And writers that I've worked with so far, like at the end of the first day of the first writer's room I was like going in for the hug and everyone was like, oh, I'll see you tomorrow. And I was like, whoa, different world. It's like, okay, we don't hug here. But I think that there's when I'm writing these people, I'm trying to locate where they sit in my body and trying to feel where their energy is, like whether they're people that lean from their chest or talk from their cunt or whatever, like where those, because that's what I do as an actor, is just go, okay, where does this person move from and talk from in my body and kind of move from that place. And they're all always really different. And so I think I probably look like a bit of a crazy person at the library because I'm going, like playing jollies with myself. But yeah, it definitely, I find that I have to embody the character and they're all pretty much told from the perspective of one character. I don't think I could do it any other way. I don't think I could, as an actor, you're so used to getting inside one person's head and just looking at the world that way. And so I think the same applies.
I've talked about it for me, working with actors on stage was one of the most liberating experiences of my life as a writer, because I'm not an actor. In fact, one of my recurring nightmares, and I had it the other night, is that I get on stage and I don't know my lines.
I have them too. Yeah, it's awful.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
But working with actors was actually was so important to go, how does the body experience? And I loved becoming this 16-year-old girl, becoming this 78-year-old man. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that was a gift that actors gave me. I'm fascinated that it doesn't work the other way around. Yet.
I don't know. Again, it's been quiet. But yeah, I think as acting as well, you're saying other people's words. And I think as well, part of the reason I've fallen in love with writing so hard is, in my experience of acting, the outside world doesn't come in as much. Like the dream you had last night doesn't inform what you say the next day on set. Whereas with this, like, dreams you have, or the colour of the sky an afternoon on the train is like, oh, fuck, that's the end of my story. Like that makes you much more porous to the world or something.
Well, the question I was going to ask, and you actually saying those words makes me think, I was going to ask you, it feels like you are a writer, like because that is actually exactly what we do as writers. I always keep a notebook by my bed because I think it's in that state between dreaming and waking that sometimes the best, like the answer comes. How to end a story or how to start a story.
Yeah.
So it feels like to me you're instinctively a writer. Is there a tension there now between acting and writing, or is it something do you feel like you've always been a writer, I guess I'm asking?
No. I think now that I am doing it, I don't want to do anything else. My agent's not in the audience. So that stays here. No, I will always act. I love it, particularly theatre. I can't imagine going through life and not doing theatre. But I definitely feel as a person, I prefer how I move through the world as a writer. I find it like a much more curious existence, I suppose. I think acting can get a bit boring, to be honest. Yeah.
I mean, curiosity is hard to have on a film set.
Yeah,
I think.
And resentment's pretty easy.
Eros is sexual love. In the Greek, there's also agape, which is the love that we can have as friends, the love that we can have as family, the love that we can have as neighbours. One of the most powerful things in so many of the stories, I'm thinking of the first story, I'm thinking of Artemis and Callisto, is the love between the mother and child. That seems a theme throughout the story, Zoe, and it's so beautifully expressed. But there is also, in Artemis and Callisto, a love that a mother has for the son that can be a really damaging, brutal, ugly love. And there's a real rage in that writing as well. And there's a rage about who the father is in those stories. Can you talk about that rage? And also then a question that I'm dealing with, so I'm going to ask you is, what does it mean? That rage is feminist, right? Like that's what does it mean for us as men to experience that rage? How do you see it? How do you deal with it?
Yeah. There's so much rage in the book, to be honest. I think because it's a time where rage is pretty accessible feeling. I think, I feel bad for my dad because I love my dad. I have a great dad. And the dads do not get a good rap in this book.
The dad is more symbolic than you.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I think how those fathers are made is something that is equally as important, like how these men are made and the permission they are given at every point in their life that leads them to do these things is equally as important, which is you get with, Zeus.
Well, yes.
Yeah. But I think the mothers in the myths are so important because particularly as a trans person, like trans mothers are what have kept this community alive, period. Like there is no trans life without trans mothers. And I think the concept of motherhood, like my mum is a cis woman, but is an extraordinary woman. And how razor sharp a mother's love is, whether it is for a child that is her own or a child that she's adopted from the street because their parents have kicked them out, whatever that love is, like you see in the last myth as well, Hermaphroditus is, adoptive family. Like there is that love that that edges on violence. It's so loving, and I think that's, that's really throughout the book is looking at this violent femininity that we so often ascribe to men, but it's like these women love their children so much they would kill, you know. And then in the inverse as well, because obviously, you know, the fathers in the book are pretty fucked, but the the lovers in the book, that was really important to me as well, is having these brown men, these Lebanese and Palestinian men and Greek men in this book be infinitely tender, you know, and have, I think especially now with the genocide, our image of brown men is killing people. How we hold Arab men in our collective understanding is part of what dehumanizes them and enables us all to sit by while they are killed. And so it was really important for me in this book to have these men who are aware of how the world sees them. And like I was saying before about the underworld, it's like with each other, these, you know, Hermaphroditus has a crush on Mahmoud, who's this Palestinian boy. And their love is arguably the most tender in the whole book. But when Hermaphroditus is met with this, like, white poof, who essentially is just like, you know, you're all, like I say, kind of one wash of God-fearing, barbaric rage, it's like these men rise to meet it. It's like, fuck you, I will be what you ascribe, you expect. I'm going to beat you to it, you know? So I guess holding those two...
Oh, you do, because the tenderness is there in Mahmoud. It's also, I mean, one of my favourite characters is Yanni. In Artemis.
Yeah,
like that.
beautiful.
I mean, that's another form of love, right?
Yeah.
That is expressed in that. I don't think it's either or, Zoe. That's not my... it is a tension. Like, how do we hold a love for... I'm like you. I had an incredibly gentle father who could come as a migrant working class man to a queer bookshop, put on a shirt and tie to celebrate his queer son's book. But there's the shadow of the father, the shadow of Zeus.
Yeah.
So it's just it's that negotiating that as men, and that is, I think, one of the powerful things in the collection. There is a question I want to ask about this. These are queer stories. They're, you know, Eros, queer myths for us. But what is the tension, or is there a tension between that word queer and that word trans? That you know, you talk about those white poofters.
Yeah.
Like what is that tension for you? Is that...
I think it's more a tension between the word gay and the word queer.
Yep.
Is what I find. Like, I think a person can be, you know, whether it's a man or a woman, or it often is a cis person, can be a man that exclusively has sex with men, or a woman that exclusively has sex with women, but is not a queer person. Because to me, queer is a way of looking at the world, and queer is inherently political, and queer is like a lens as well as an identity or a way of fucking or whatever. And so I think, and queer also to me comes with it brown and black and trans. Queer holds those identities as like comrades or siblings, you know.
I've always thought of it as an invitation.
Yeah.
Queer.
Yeah.
That's different to gay.
Absolutely. And I think that's what these characters embody, is a queerness, you know, and I think, and come up against that gayness that is offered, you know. Even it was funny, I was at a ACON event for their anniversary, which is the like AIDS Council of New South Wales. And there was this old queen came up to me. He would have been like, I think he said he was 86. Beautiful man, white man, pearl earrings, like an angel. And we were talking, and just it was standing in like the corridor of STC or whatever, and he was kind of looking at me and we were having a beautiful conversation. He said, "Where are you from?" I was like, "Oh, my family's from Crete, but I mean, I'm from here." And he was like, "Right." Oh no, I said, "I'm from here." And then he kept talking. He said, "Where are you really from?" And it was just this kind of, I was like, fuck, that's right. There is an element, because of the time I've grown up in, like, that you get shielded from a lot. And also I just hang around with trans people, and like black and brown people. So it's like there is a buffering from that, I suppose. But it was a kick up the arse, I guess, to just go, oh, that's right, fuck.
Yeah.
The casual racism or xenophobia in, like you say, on Oxford Street at that time would have been vicious,
Yeah, and it's still there in different ways.
Absolutely.
And I mean, class is that's why the Hermaphrodites. I mean, the very title is talking about possibility, right? I think that's what is so embodied in that story, and embodied in the bodies in that story. Kind of there. I am not surprised you're talking about that relationship of, let's use a really old-fashioned word, comradeship, which you don't divorce from sex, and I really, really like that, Zoe, because I think sometimes sex, we maybe it is the English shadow that we don't want to talk about sex, but there is, right from your forward, an understanding of yourself as Cretan, and that word is a lot more complicated than just a location on an island, because it speaks to an Eastern Mediterranean, Middle Eastern world. How conscious were you of that identity in the writing of Eros?
So conscious, yeah, like central to, I suppose. And a lot of the myths, almost all of them, are specifically Cretan myths. And yeah, for folks who don't know, the Crete is kind of at the arse end. It's an island at the arse end of Greece. And it's like, here's the mainland.
And one of the most beautiful places.
Oh yeah, it's fucking beautiful. yeah, I'm not doing it justice. Here's sort of Egypt, Libya, Crete, southern Italy, Greece, Turkey. And the Minoan civilization is one of the oldest. And the Minoans traded with Egypt, Syria, and Palestine extensively. And so you kind of have this incredible melting pot of food and architecture and myth. So the first story, which again, as I said, I found in Ovid's Metamorphoses, which takes place on the shores of Crete. And instead of a Greek god coming to this pregnant woman's bedside, it's Isis. It's an Egyptian god. She just rocks up because, it's a stone's throw. And so, it's like, it's a very specific place. I was saying to you before, my grandfather always used to say he wasn't proud to be Greek, but he was proud to be Cretan. And it's so of itself, like even in Chania, it's a Venetian port with a mosque bang in the middle of it. Like, it's just this kind of incredible mixture of places in that region. So yeah, it felt really important to me to particularly talk about it in the introduction, because you got to kind of get your head around that to get your head around the book, I suppose.
What is that merging of? You've got to tell your dad this. I've got a friend, and her background's Calabrese Italian, and she says, "What is it? What's the definition of a Greek? A Turk who thinks they're Italian."
It's true. It's true.
But it is that the resonance, I think, of the mythology is that it isn't owned by one. The word Greek isn't enough to encompass these stories, because they are Egyptian, they are Palestinian, they are Sudanese. That they're actually coming from a world that was always in interchange,
in conversation with each
and
other. Yeah.
Importantly, in sexual exchange for good or bad, and I think that is a really important part of what you do in Eros, is do a reminder of that. I'm going to ask you a question about myth and its importance. I remember years and years ago, when the first Gladiator, the Russell Crowe movie, came out, right? And I was a bit, I was like, I thought he was beautiful. But I was being a bit, I was at a bar, and it was, I remember the place, it was Braddon in Canberra, and being a bit dismissive of it. And there was a young woman, lesbian, and she said to me, no, you don't understand. We really need myths. And we don't have those kind of myths. And I was really struck by the passion with which she argued that. Having written this book, what is it that you think we need in terms of myths?
Well, I think particularly as queer people and trans people, and particularly as ethnic queer people and trans people, this world is at present is spinning many a bullshit narrative, one of which is that trans people are a contemporary problem to be solved, and one that, the solution is to eradicate trans people from public life. And I think that phrase, a world without trans people has never existed and never will, is so important, but also to me became, I kind of, when you say a word over and over and over and then it stops meaning anything, it started to feel a bit like that, like a phrase you just kind of launch back as a fuck you that started to feel a bit baseless. And so I think having access to our mythology as trans people, that is evidence that we are not new. That is evidence that thousands and thousands of years ago, there was a boy just like me in fucking Crete, who Isis came over from Egypt and gave a penis. Like, that is so moving and so life-affirming. And it means that for me personally, I now spend less time arguing semantics with these people, because in my bones, I know just how ancient we are. And this is just in my culture, it's just in our culture.
Yeah.
You dig into any ancient civilization or any indigenous civilization, and trans people and queer people are not only present, but are like medicine people or holy people. And I think being able to hold on to that as queers and as trans people, and especially ethnic queers and trans people, where so often cultures feel at odds with queerness or transness. It's like that is what is new.
That is really eloquent and true. I would also say to you, what you do, and I think there's a number of trans writers doing this, and I think it's really important, is also Zoe texted me and asked if I'd read John Reshi, City of Night, who was and I just went, have I? He was such an important queer writer for me when I was a really young person, because he was writing about the politics of what it meant to be who we are, but he was not afraid of writing the sex of who we are. And I think writing the sex of what trans people are is fucking crucial, Zoe.
Yeah.
And that is, I use the word euphoria, that's, I think I meant that because that's what we haven't heard. That's been part of the story of erasure. And so it's we're staying up late. Was the writing of sex sexy? Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I had to go home from the library a lot. Yeah, I also started testosterone when I was writing, so I didn't stand a fucking chance. Yeah, I had to excuse myself from Marrickville Library quite a few times. Yeah, it was so sexy. I felt really up myself every time as well, because I just turn myself on a little bit. But yeah, it is. And I think especially like you say, trans sex is something that we have no representation of. Like, I remember when we were doing Wentworth, and, we were playing characters who are like wildly in love and so horny for each other and whatever. And we were like, hey, you guys gonna write a sex scene anytime? And it's like they literally like, you know, like, we don't know how, because trans sex is terrifying to them because they don't. It's like, what even are they? What they do there, you know? And so I think it's and so I think it's so important to have trans sex be so explicit, and sexy and weird and fucked up and political, and have all those worlds like really kind of, for want of a better phrase, smash into each other, because they're all so connected, you know. And I think even in that last story with Hermaphroditus, like when he at the time, not a she yet, is having sex with Mahmoud, and who's Palestinian, they see these olive trees kind of like coming together, and the olive trees of their mother countries, you know, and like the olive trees are fucking. And I don't know, there's just a detail that I felt very privileged to be able to lend these characters, because I think it is something we rob trans characters of, is their sex, because our sex is so used against us. Our sex is vilified and contorted, and we're told that our sex makes us pedophiles. Like, our sex is used against us to the point that it's like, it's a sick thing and it's a shameful thing. So a trans person, any trans character that we see in mainstream media, it's like the main thing they're focusing on is just going, it's okay, they're trans, it's okay, you know. Them as a sexual... Don't show
them having sex.
Oh, that's out of the question. It's out of the question. And I just wanted to make it in the question.
So many questions, but I don't want to bogey your time, and I know there will be a lot of questions from the audience. I will say to you that I reckon writing is 10% inspiration and 90% masturbation.
Not just me.
Look, all of us.
Wow. That's actually quite assuring.
Zoe, very generously, you can answer, and there's these are some great questions. So I'm just gonna go right. If you could play any character from Greek myth on screen or on stage, who would it be and why?
That's so hard.
And that's from Jax.
Okay, thank you for that question. I've got 3. I've got 4. Okay. Iphis, who probably most of you don't know yet, but you will imminently. Icarus, because it's just somebody who loves that hard, that they, you know.
Yeah,
I just think
I haven't. There was I just can't thank you enough for that story because of, you know, as I said, from a child there was something about Apollo and love.
Yeah.
But Icarus was also one of my favourite characters in the whole of storytelling.
Yeah. He's just to love that fiercely is something that I think is a really interesting world to play in.
Willing to burn.
Yeah.
For love, like actually, literally to burn for love.
Yeah. So Icarus, and then Achilles and Hermaphroditus. I'll take any of them. Yeah.
What's one of the myths that didn't make it in the book but is still speaking to you and won't let you go?
Oh, that's such a good question. Felt really shitty that I didn't get around to Sappho. I had...
You do begin with an epigram.
Yeah. Sappho was one that kept kind of nagging at me. The Sacred Band of Thebes also nagged at me. And Hercules.
Yeah.
Because he was getting it done, let me tell you. He was fucking dudes. Yeah, those 3 I wanted bad.
Oh man, the Greek gods, they have more fun than any god.
Anyone else? Anyone? Yeah. Jealous.
I do actually think the Sacred Band of Thebes is a really important one, Zoe,
Yeah.
because it is both mythic about men loving, like warrior men going, we will go into war as lovers.
Yeah.
And to do it in a culture
Yeah.
which, it's only recently that you could be queer and serve in the military in some places. Lots of places you couldn't. And the foulness of what's happening to trans people in the United States now in the military, I think there is something really powerful about that bond.
Well, even the ancientness of it as well, just the genius of that band was that no one would fight as hard for anyone as they would their lover, And I think that's juicy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, you can write it, but I'll give you 7 years. If you don't, I'm going.
Deal.
I always say that. It's like, I want to be fair.
Yeah, we can sign something after, Put it in writing.
I'm curious, how does it feel when you write about bodies, flesh and sex in all their grotesque beauty? What's it feel like when you write about it?
Sometimes, well, there's sexual violence in the book as well, that is important to touch on. And that was pretty awful, actually, writing about that, because it's with a trans body, but also essential to write about it because A, that is intrinsic to the myth, and I was not in the business of changing the bones of the myth, as I said, and B, it's also unfortunately bedfellows with the trans experience, and so it's in there, and that was really challenging to write about. It was pretty upsetting. But
did you have a strategy for when it got upsetting? Or?
No, because it crept up because I write so slowly. I didn't expect to get as far as I would that day. And I was like the end of the day at a library and it was just kind of happening. And I went home and I felt so fucked. Like I just felt like scrambled because I had sort of planned that it would be the next day and I'd see my partner after and it just wasn't. And yeah, it was pretty shitty. But the salve has been writing the beauty of queer sex and trans sex in this book. And yeah, as I said, that was pretty horny. Yeah, it was a pretty beautiful experience.
I mean, I will tell you, because when you do go into those violences and those deeply hurtful places, we were talking about, I mean, we don't have the language in this culture, which is why myth is so important. Like, I don't think I do ask for protection, wherever that protection is coming from. Like, I just think it's important because sometimes in the honesty of writing, particularly the kind of work you do, you just need to make sure that the good gods are there.
Yeah, for sure.
Looking after you, I think. So that's what Papu Tsiolkas.
Yeah. Thank you.
There's a couple of questions that are asking, and is there a sense, because you were talking about, you had a number of myths that you wanted to explore, is there a sense that, is there an Eros too, or is there a still work you want to do as a writer on the myth?
Yeah, it's interesting because I've just started writing a novel, which is which is set in the 90s in Sydney about a young Cretan trans boy who's gay or queer, and it's interesting. I sat down to write it, and I was like, "This is gonna be so real, man. It's gonna be so real." It's like all this myth stuff. That was Eros, man. And it just has so not been the case. Like I don't know if I'll ever write anything where that myth is entirely separate from it. I don't know if I can, because I think what it affords you and what place it puts me in as a writer, and I feel it puts the reader in, is like there's a contract signed where we're okay sitting, if here's reality, we're okay sitting just above it. And I think that's the stuff I love reading most. That's the stuff I love writing most. And yeah, so in my next book, because it's the time of, you know, the AIDS crisis, and I was thinking about the places, you know, people go when they die in Greek myth, and there's obviously Hades, there's Tartarus, and then there's Elysium, where heroes go to die. And kind of antithetically to Eurydice, I was like, oh, I think these gay men who die of AIDS go to Elysium. They go where heroes go. And so I think even though this next book has fuck all to do with retelling any myths, myth will always be part of that work, I think.
It's because it is part of our DNA.
Yeah.
Zoe, I think that is such an excellent idea, because the power of your writing is in the sex, in the anger, in the rage, but it's also there in the compassion. So I can't wait to read that book. Everyone, can we please give a big round of applause for this amazing writer, Zoe Terakes.